What if the Great Flood was not an end, but a beginning? We are taught it was a cleansing of the earth, a divine judgment upon a wicked world. But what if its true purpose was to conceal a secret? A truth so powerful that it was sealed away beneath the waters, waiting for a generation prepared to understand the real story of creation. Ancient rabbinic traditions and fragmented texts like the Book of Jubilees speak of a sacred inheritance that survived the flood. They describe a sealed scroll, passed from Noah to his sons, containing the one story that has been deliberately forgotten, the true purpose of the Garden of Eden. This was no simple history of a peaceful paradise. It was the account of a spiritual battlefield. This lost testimony revealed that Eden was a divine response to a celestial rebellion that scarred the heavens long before Adam was formed. It exposed an ancient enemy that man was created to replace, and a cosmic war he was born to fight. Why have we never heard this? Because early church leaders, fearing this knowledge would shatter the simple narrative of the fall, ordered this truth removed from common teaching. What you are about to discover will connect the dots between Genesis, forgotten texts, and the true reason for the flood. This is the story of a secret preserved, not a world punished. If you are ready to uncover the truths that have been hidden for millennia, make sure you are subscribed and click the like button. Let us know in the comments if you have ever felt there was more to the story of Genesis. The answers have been waiting. We are taught to read Genesis as the absolute beginning, but have you ever felt that something is missing right from the first page? The story begins, and almost immediately, a serpent appears in the garden, a fully formed enemy with a plan. Where did it come from? The Bible seems to start in the middle of a conflict that is never explained. This is not an oversight. It is a deliberate omission. The clues to what was removed are still there, hidden in plain sight. Consider the words God Himself speaks in the book of Job, chapter 38. He asks Job, "Where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth, while the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy?" Think about that. Before man was even formed from dust, celestial beings, the sons of God, were already there, witnessing the creation. They were ancient. They were present. This single verse shatters the idea that nothing existed before Adam. It proves there was a history before human history. What if the account in Genesis is not the full story but a summary, a version edited for a world not yet ready for the whole truth? Ancient traditions suggest that the original story of creation was much longer and far more dramatic. It told of a glorious celestial kingdom, a rebellion that tore through the heavens, and a war that resulted in a fallen world, formless and void, long before the 6 days of restoration described in Genesis. This changes everything. If a war in heaven preceded the Garden of Eden, then the garden was not simply a home for humanity, it was a response. It was a divine countermove in a spiritual war that had already begun. This begs the most important question we have never been encouraged to ask. What was the true, strategic purpose of placing man in Eden? The answers we seek are not entirely lost. They echo in texts that were intentionally left on the margins of history. Ancient Jewish traditions, found in commentaries like the Midrash, and fragmented accounts in books like the Book of Jubilees, speak of a world far older and more complex than we imagine. These are not New Age fantasies. They are ancient records revered by scholars for centuries that were once considered essential for understanding the beginning. They speak of a sealed testimony, a sacred history given to Noah, which explained the true cosmic purpose of the Garden of Eden. These ancient writings do not contradict Genesis, they complete it. Think of the cryptic passage in Genesis chapter 6, which speaks of the sons of God and the Nephilim. The Bible mentions them and then moves on, leaving us with a profound mystery. But texts like Jubilees fill in the gaps. They describe in detail the nature of this celestial rebellion, the war that preceded man, and the reason these events had to be washed away by the flood. These accounts provide the context, the before story, that makes the events in Eden finally make sense. So why are these truths not common knowledge? Why were these books set aside? The reason is as simple as it is shocking. Early church councils, in their effort to create a simple and accessible faith for a growing world, made a choice. They decided this knowledge was too profound, too complex, and potentially too frightening for the average believer. They feared it would distract from the central message of salvation. In an act of protection, they removed these accounts, preserving the story of the fall but erasing the story of the war. But in hiding this truth, they also hid our purpose. They left us with a story of failure, without the context of the cosmic battle we were created to win. They removed the chapters that explained the ancient enemy man was designed to replace. What you are about to learn is not a new doctrine, but a restored one. It is the truth of why you are here, a truth that has been waiting for millennia to be reclaimed. Before the 6 days of creation, there was not nothingness. There was a kingdom, a celestial realm of unimaginable light and order, populated by the very sons of God who shouted for joy at the founding of the earth. Ancient traditions describe this as the primordial age, a time when God's authority was administered through legions of glorious beings. This was a world of perfect harmony, a cosmic temple. But every story of a great kingdom has a chapter on a great betrayal. That betrayal came not from an outside force, but from within. The Midrash and other ancient commentaries speak of a war that tore through the heavens, an insurrection led by the most brilliant of God's created beings. This was not a small skirmish. It was a cataclysm, a spiritual conflict so devastating that it fractured the original creation. This is the Forgotten War, the conflict that preceded time as we know it, involving ancient celestial entities that the scriptures only hint at. This is the event that set the stage for everything that was to follow. And what became of the battlefield? The answer is hidden in the second verse of the Bible. The earth became formless and void. This was not its original state. It was the result of judgment. The war left a ruin, a dark, watery chaos that was once a vibrant part of God's kingdom. The 6 days of creation described in Genesis were not the making of something from nothing. They were an act of restoration. God was reclaiming a fallen territory, bringing light back into a realm that had been plunged into darkness by rebellion. This single omitted truth changes the entire narrative of the Bible. Without it, the appearance of the serpent in a perfect garden makes no sense. But with it, everything clicks into place. The Garden of Eden was not a peaceful paradise waiting to be corrupted. It was a divine headquarters established on enemy ground. Adam was not simply the first man. He was God's answer to the rebellion, a new creation designed to inherit the authority that the fallen ones had forfeited. This is why his fall was so catastrophic, and why the enemy was already there, waiting for him. The story you have been told is simple and powerful. A peaceful garden, an innocent couple, and a single act of disobedience that changed the world forever. It is a story of a fall from grace. But this traditional view, while true, is incomplete. It is a chapter taken from a much larger, more epic saga. The hidden truth is that Eden was never meant to be a simple paradise. It was a divine command center, established on territory reclaimed from a cosmic enemy. The story we were given is about our failure. The story that was removed is about the war we were created to win. So why has this profound truth been buried for so long? The reason is not a conspiracy of evil, but an act of protection that went too far. Early church leaders, in their mission to spread the gospel to a world steeped in complex mythologies, made a calculated decision. They believed the story of a pre-Adamic war, of celestial rebellions and a fallen creation being restored, was too overwhelming, too complex for new believers. They feared it would cause confusion and doubt, distracting from the central saving message of the cross. To simplify was to safeguard. This was not a slow, accidental process of forgetting. It was a series of deliberate choices made in councils that shaped the faith for centuries to come. Texts that offer deeper insight into the events before Genesis, like the Book of Jubilees or the Book of Enoch, were set aside. They were labeled apocryphal, meaning hidden, and were removed from common teaching. In an effort to protect the flock from what they saw as dangerous complexities, these ancient leaders effectively censored the opening chapters of our own cosmic history. The consequence of this decision echoes to this day. By removing the context of the celestial war, they also removed the full understanding of our divine purpose. We were left with a narrative of human weakness, but without the knowledge of the incredible authority we were designed to wield. They taught us about the temptation in the garden, but not about the ancient enemy who was already there, desperate to prevent humanity from taking its rightful place. What was lost was not just a story. It was our identity as soldiers in a battle that began long before the world we know. This knowledge changes the way we read every single page of the Bible. Suddenly, the plan of God is not just about saving humanity from a mistake made in a garden. It becomes a grand, cosmic strategy of restoration, a plan set in motion before the foundations of the world were laid. The cross is no longer just a remedy for sin. It is the ultimate act of war, reclaiming a territory and an authority that was lost in a conflict far more ancient than Adam. It is no accident that this truth is re-emerging in our time. Perhaps generations past were not ready. Perhaps the simplicity of the story was what was needed. But you, the one seeking deeper answers, are part of a generation that is being called to understand the full scope of God's purpose. This is not a truth for the spiritually timid. It is a revelation for those who have always suspected there was more to the story, for those who are ready to embrace a faith that is as vast and profound as the God we serve. Have you ever felt that modern faith has become too comfortable, too safe, that the sense of an urgent, spiritual battle has been lost? This is the consequence of removing the first chapter of the war. When we don't know the enemy's origins or the true stakes of the conflict, our role becomes passive. We see ourselves as rescued victims rather than enlisted soldiers. But this forgotten history restores that urgency. It explains the resistance we feel in our lives and the spiritual darkness in the world, because it reminds us that we live on a battlefield. Understanding this does not weaken your faith, it fortifies it. It provides the context for the spiritual authority given to believers. It gives weight to the command to put on the full armor of God. You are not just a child of God. You are an inheritor of a divine mandate, placed on this earth to reclaim what was lost and to demonstrate the wisdom of God to the principalities and powers in the heavenly realms. This is not just history, this is your identity. But what if the story goes even deeper? We have uncovered the war that preceded man and the true strategic purpose of the Garden of Eden. But this raises an even more profound question. If the 6 days of Genesis were an act of restoration on a fallen world, what did that original perfect world look like before its ruin? Ancient Jewish mystics wrote of a primordial light, a divine radiance that was the very fabric of the first creation. This was not the light of the sun or stars, but the unfiltered glory of God Himself. This primordial light, they say, was withdrawn from the world after the great celestial rebellion, hidden away by God for the righteous at the end of days. What we see in Genesis, the creation of light on the first day, was not its true beginning, but its reintroduction. A small spark of that original glory being brought back into a universe plunged into darkness. The world before Adam was not just a place of peace. It was a realm saturated with this divine light, a reality we can barely comprehend. This forgotten truth forces us to look at the Garden of Eden with new eyes. It was not just a piece of reclaimed territory, it was something more. Could it be that Eden was a sanctuary, a specially prepared place on earth, where a remnant of this hidden primordial light was preserved? A place where heaven and earth were not just connected, but were one and the same, just as they were in the beginning, before the war. And this leads to the most critical question of all. If Eden contained this original light, then what was the true nature of the two trees? We have been told the story of good and evil, but what if the tree of life was a conduit to this lost creative power of God? What if the enemy's goal was not simply to make man sin, but to stop him from accessing a power that could have restored the entire fallen creation in an instant? The truth is far greater than a story of a forbidden fruit. It is the story of a lost power, a hidden light, and a destiny that was almost seized. This changes how we must see God Himself. For centuries, we have known Him as the Creator, the one who spoke a perfect world into existence from an absolute void. But this hidden history reveals an even more profound truth about His nature. God is a restorer. He did not abandon a creation that had been fractured by war. He stepped into the darkness and the chaos, into a world that was formless, and began the divine work of reclamation. The 6 days of Genesis are not just the story of creation, they are the story of the first great act of redemption. And what was His ultimate answer to the celestial rebellion that caused this ruin? It was man. Adam was not simply the first inhabitant of a new world. He was God's strategic response. He did not create another powerful angelic being to replace the one who fell. Instead, He created something entirely new, a being formed from the dust of the reclaimed earth, yet bearing the very image of God. Humanity was designed to inherit the authority the fallen ones had forfeited, and to rule in the very realm the enemy sought to control. Our existence is a testament, a living declaration that God's purpose will always prevail over rebellion. Does this knowledge shake the foundations of your faith, or does it make them unshakable? This truth does not contradict the simple, powerful message of the cross. It magnifies it. It elevates the story of salvation from the repair of a single human mistake into the climactic final victory in a cosmic war that has raged since before time began. The love of God is not just demonstrated in forgiving our sin, but in His unwavering commitment to restore a universe that was scarred by an ancient betrayal. This is the key that unlocks the deeper narrative of the Scriptures. This hidden knowledge does not destroy faith, it deepens it, giving it a context that is as vast as eternity. It confirms what you have always sensed in your spirit, that your life is part of a story far greater than you were told, a story of a divine purpose established in the heart of God long before the Garden of Eden was ever planted. So where does this leave us? We have journeyed back before the world we know, uncovering a war in the heavens and a garden that was a battlefield. But the most profound secret was not what happened before Adam, but what was planned for him. The redemption of mankind was not a reaction to the fall. It was the original plan, conceived in the heart of God before the first star was ever hung in the heavens. The Scripture itself declares this, speaking of the Lamb, slain from the foundation of the world. God did not create Adam hoping he would succeed, only to be surprised by his failure. He created Adam knowing the battle he would face, and had already prepared the ultimate victory. With this truth in hand, the book of Genesis is transformed. It is no longer just the story of a tragic fall, but the story of a promise revealed. When God speaks to the serpent in the garden, promising that the seed of the woman would crush its head, this was not a hastily devised plan B. It was the first public declaration of a plan that had existed for eternity. Every event that follows, every sacrifice, every covenant, every prophecy, is a deliberate step in the unfolding of this ancient divine strategy. The story of the Bible is not God reacting to us. It is the story of us being woven into His eternal purpose. This cosmic plan has a name, and it has a face. Jesus Christ was not merely the Savior of humanity. He was God's answer to the original celestial rebellion. He is the fulfillment of what Adam was meant to be, the perfect man, wielding divine authority to reclaim a fallen creation. His death and resurrection were not just the payment for human sin. They were the final, decisive blow in a war that began in the darkness before time. He is the primordial light, returned to a world that had forgotten it, demonstrating God's ultimate triumph over every enemy, seen and unseen. Therefore, your faith is not built on the fragile hope that a human mistake could be fixed. It is anchored in the unshakable certainty of a divine plan, set in motion before the world was ever formed. You are not a descendant of a failed plan. You are an heir to an eternal victory. This is the truth that was hidden, the context that was removed, and the revelation that restores not just our history, but our very identity as children of a God, whose wisdom and love knew no beginning and will know no end. Take a moment and let this new understanding settle in your spirit. This is not just an alternative history. It is a restored foundation. The story of a cosmic war, a divine restoration, and a purpose for humanity far grander than we were ever taught. This knowledge changes not what you believe, but the depth at which you believe it, transforming your faith from a story of rescue into a story of inheritance and victory. For centuries, these truths were considered too complex, too profound for the common believer. They were sealed away in ancient texts and forgotten traditions, waiting for a time when God's people would be ready to look beyond the veil. That time is now. You are part of a generation being called to reclaim the full counsel of God, to understand the war you were born into and the incredible authority you were created to wield. If this truth burns in your heart and resonates with a wisdom you have always sensed was there, show your support. Leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and activate the notification bell so you do not miss the revelations to come. We want to hear from you, so please, let us know in the comments what city you are watching from, and join this community of seekers from around the world. And now, we have a special invitation for those who feel called to go deeper and partner with us. We have opened a members area. By becoming a member, you directly bless this work and empower us to continue producing edifying and revealing content like this. Your support helps us dedicate the time needed to uncover these forgotten truths and bring them into the light.